Okay, so this is the District Grant Learning Seminar. It's for grant authors and treasurers. We've had in last year we had a separate one for grant authors and treasurers, um, but I didn't see it necessary that we do two separate ones, so we're just going to roll it all into one. I've got some surproof, surproof. Yeah, that's a hard word for me this morning. So annually we do this so that clubs, authors, and committee members know what they're doing. And that's a bigger deal than it sounds like because it causes anxiety and frustration a lot of times when people run into roadblocks because they don't know where to go next. And then they have to call, and then it takes other people time to do that. Where if you follow along, follow the rules, and understand what's going on, then nobody has to waste their time. So along with this video and this training that we're doing today, you have to pass a quiz at 90%. And the quiz covers the material that's in the PowerPoint today. If you want additional information, you can go to the 5110 Foundation Policy and Procedure Manual, which is on that District Grants landing page. The terms and conditions of Rotary Grants, Rotary Foundation, as well as the cooperating organization MOU and the club MOU. Those are all on the landing page. So some key information initially, we've changed the DDF match. So there is a $3,000 match for club cash. So you can have a grant for $5,000, a more substantial grant. If you want to partner with another club, then then you can have a much larger grant. Um, a number of years ago, 10 or 11, 12 years ago, before we started the new grant model, there was the matching grant model. And the matching grant model started at $15,000. You can do international projects with district grant funds, and we'll talk a little more about that later. So you can do a substantial local or international project by partnering with other clubs, and we'll talk more about how to do that a little bit later too. However, because we're increased the match, if we run out of DDF, the district designated funds that are available, then projects will be selected by lottery. In the past, we've always had enough money to fund first high priority grants. That may not be true this year. I'm hoping that's not true, but it is possible. Also on this slide, you will see in the lower left there, question 12. This slide answers question 12. And so if you forget after we've gone through the quiz today, because I will go through it and give you the answers, then you can refer back to this PowerPoint and find the questions. Lee?
I got a question. Does partnering with another club take away from the 2 grant limit each club has?
It is one of those grants, and it is the high priority grant. So if you want to partner, that's fine, but it is your high priority grant.
Next question.
Mm-hmm.
Did the quiz change so that correct answers are retained if it is necessary to retake it to meet the 90% requirement?
Yes, you get a feedback. You get a feedback from your test.
Well, I think the question is more, if I got it right the first time, did it save those answers and I only go back and review this?
Oh, no, no, you have to start over. Sorry. So, five steps to successful grants. You have to qualify your club, and we're going to talk about what that means. You have to select an eligible project. Not all projects are eligible. We'll talk about those that are and those that aren't. You have to submit your grant application, and we'll talk about deadlines for that. You have to implement and manage your project, and then you have to complete a final report, and we'll talk about all of these steps. So every year you have to read, sign, and implement the requirements for the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. It describes the financial management plans, succession plans, how to report misuse of funds, bank account rules, and so forth. So in the upper right-hand corner, it says September 1st. There's going to be a change, and you're going to see that in a minute. But for now, the rest of this is September 1st. That MOU is going to be required June 1st. President, President-elect, and Treasurer of the 26-27 Rotary year must sign. So that's this year's PE, PN, and Treasurer. If your club does not have a president nominee, then your secretary can sign in their place. You also, to be qualified, have to do your dues, district and Rotary dues. Now, those generally aren't paid until into July, so that we give you till September 1st to take care of that, but we encourage you to pay those dues as soon as you get the invoices. You have to be current on district grant reports. So if you have a district grant from last year, that as long as you're making progress, that one's not due until December 1st. And so that is considered current unless you're having an issue with it, and we can talk about it. So in order to be qualified, the grant writer has to complete this seminar and pass the quiz. The treasurer has to complete this seminar and pass the quiz. In the past, the MOU has been sent to Hal Kibbe, to our stewardship chair. This year, we want it attached in the document section of the application on or before June 1st. In the bottom corner, you can see questions 1 and 16 are answered here. So let's talk about projects when you're thinking about designing them. Humanitarian projects are a given, including scholarships. You can do district grants for Interact clubs, Rotaract clubs, vocational training teams, and if you want to know more about that, contact me or Hal or anybody on the foundation team. RILA campers can be paid for. Rotary Youth Exchange student funds can be used, and grant-related travel. If you were in the global grant session earlier, you heard that district grant funds can be used for community assessment for a global grant project. You cannot use district grant funds for any other reason related to a global grant, but you can use them for the assessment portion. So here's some really important questions to answer. Now remember that district grant funds cannot be used as a pass-through. You can't just give them to the Boy Scouts or to the Girl Scouts or to the Scouts. Now, I guess they're not necessarily separate. You can't just give them to the YMCA. They have to be in Rotary control. So think about these things. Who controls the grant funds? Who selects the project items and supplies? How will Rotarians be actively involved? Is the club in control of the timeline? Is there a conflict of interest? So you have a member who is the chair of a nonprofit. It would be a great idea to do a project with that nonprofit. Is that a conflict of interest, and how do you deal with that? We'll talk a little bit more about that later. How many people are going to be served by this grant? Is there a cooperating organization involved, and how are they involved? Are there other groups involved in this project? That can cause no end of problems if you're just part of a larger project. Let's say you're building a skate park and you're just part of the money that goes to that skate park. You need to control what that money goes for. You're buying something, not just donating the money to that project. That just creates all kinds of issues. It's really important to think about those questions when you're developing a project and looking for it to be approved. When you submit your projects, your district grant applications on June 1st, the district grant team will take a look at those projects. Then we take them and fill them into something called a block grant that is submitted to the Rotary Foundation, and they then have to approve those projects. If they see something that looks like a pass-through or something in an international grant that is creating an issue, say it's in a war zone, which has happened in the past, then they're going to reject it. So we will review it and they will review it, and then it comes back to us. And once all the T's and I's are crossed, then we'll approve the grant and you can move forward with your project. At any time, if you have any questions, type them in the chat and we'll, Lee, did you see something?
I do have a question. Thank you. The question was, can the treasurer and the grant writer be the same person? The simple answer is yes. Beyond that simple answer, I would encourage more than one person to be involved with and responsible for the grant. It's a club grant project, not one or two people's project. So we really encourage, 3 to 5 people to be pretty intimately involved with the grant, and then involve the larger club members, in participating in that project, because you must demonstrate active Rotarian involvement.
And we'll cover all this again in a few minutes. So problematic issues, you cannot pass through funds. Your club has to be in control of how the funds are spent. You can work with another organization, absolutely, but you need to be in control. There has to be active Rotarian involvement, and we recommend that there's a committee. So if something happens to the grant writers, somebody can step up and go and carry it on. We've had issues with that in the past where the grant writer might have left the club or had to have surgery or some other issue, and it becomes a problem for the club. So we encourage you to get multiple people involved. As I said before, you can't use funds to pay administration, operations, indirect expenses of another organization, or capital funds of kinds of things. District grant is, you cannot supplement a global grant. You can't say, oh, I need $15,000 more. Let's get 3 clubs this, get this global grant project off the ground. Nope, won't work. So I mentioned international projects. International projects can be a real problem because you need to have some sort of a partnership with an NGO or Rotary Club. We've had grants that just support a health clinic, which you can do. You don't have to have another Rotary Club or an NGO, but there has to be strong oversight of the funds and spent in the way that the grant has said. The grant says we're going to buy an X-ray machine. Then that clinic needs to buy an X-ray machine, and then you need to get a receipt from them for that. And sometimes getting receipts and having them spend the money exactly how it's written in the grant can be problematic. If you have a cooperating organization, it's best to have a cooperating organization MOU, if spelling out everyone's role. It's also important to plan on how Rotarians in your club are going to be actively involved. And when you have an international project, it's even more difficult sometimes than it is in local projects. And we'll talk about ways that Rotarians can be involved in both international and local projects. And the other part is in-country currency stability. And if you send over, $5,000 for something another country and there's a coup or a war, that can be problematic. Lee?
You talked about partnerships, and a question came up. We're working on a new Rotaract club, and we'll need startup costs covered in support. If the 2 clubs sponsoring this initiative apply for a multi-club project, is that eligible?
Yes, you can use it for Interact and Rotaract and RILA and student, anything that involves students pretty much. If it's an issue, we'll get back to you, or better yet, send us an email or give me a call and we can talk about it. So on June 1st, that's a big deadline. Go to the DACDB grants, take an application and fill out all the tabs. 2 grants per club, must be a high priority and a medium priority. And as we said before, multi-clubs are all high priority grants. Each project is limited to $3,000 in matching grant funds. That's DDF. So you add your 2,000 club cash and you have a $5,000 cash. There's no limit on clubs that can go together on projects. Only the club that handles the funds need to be qualified. However, the caveat, that's the word I'm looking for. The caveat to that is Rotarians in each of the multi-club partnership must participate in some fashion. So they can't just give one club their money. They have to be involved. There has to be a complete budget in the application. Presidents from each club must sign the grant application. Now, the caveat to that is that doesn't have to be completed until September 1st. But to submit the grant, the president of the lead club must sign it. Multi-club projects are always high priority, as we've said, and the club president from the 26-27 year, so that your PE is the one who signs and submits the grant application. So this is new. That's why it's in red and bolded. When your grant application is submitted June 1st, there needs to be a signed MOU attached to the grant application in the documents section, and a district grant bank statement must be attached to the grant application, also in the documents section. Excuse me. And so you ask, why is this? Are we asking this? It's because it takes hours, literally, to contact clubs and remind them to do these things prior to September 1st. To eliminate all that work, we're just asking simply to attach the MOU from your club, signed by all 3 of those people, president-elect, president nominee, and the treasurer for 26-27, and then attach a grant bank statement. So it's the latest one, whether it's in probably May, or you may not get the May statement until after June 1st, so it would be the April statement. And if you have a grant funds from last year going into this year and you still haven't spent those funds, that's okay. We'll take that into consideration. But those 2 things must be attached June 1st, or your grant will not be considered. So we have a hand up, Lee.
We do. Mike, mute yourself and go ahead.
Yes. Won't the district already have the bank statement?
No. Well, we might have from your previous grant, yes, but we need it every year.
Okay, that's not from our bank statement. That's from a district grant bank statement, right?
It's from your club's district grant bank account, whether it's a bank account or a sub account. We just need a copy of the latest bank statement posted in the
From our club.
from your club's district
Okay,
grant account.
And Tim,
got
just
it. Okay, thank you.
out of curiosity, is that just to verify the existence of a distinct account? Is that the
Two
function of
things.
your account?
You're correct. One is to verify that there is an account, and the other thing is to make sure there's not too much money in it or not enough money in it. So we have experience of working with these district grant accounts over the years, and so we have a sense of whether or not the appropriate amount of money is in those accounts. If there's $20,000 in there, then somebody's made a mistake. There shouldn't be any more than $4,500 if you have a current project going on, and generally there's you can keep like $250 in it to keep the account open. Lee?
More questions, Tim. You've talked quite a bit about 2 forms that are important to people putting together these grant projects. Where do they find the club MOU?
It's found on the district grant landing page for 2627. All the forms and attachments you need are on that page.
Tim, they were also passed out at Pell's, so their club president-elect should have a copy as well.
Okay, thank you, Hal.
Another question, we talked about the importance and the appropriateness of having a cooperating organization and in place a cooperating organization MOU. So here's the question. If the funds are dedicated to a specific purchase and the cooperating organization provides the invoice and the receipt of payment, are you going to need a corporate MOU demonstrating that?
If the cooperating organization touches the money, you need an MOU. If they don't touch the money, then you don't need an MOU. Another example is if we're going to be gardening at the senior home on Elm Street, do we need an MOU from the senior home on Elm Street? No, but it would be good to have a letter saying it's okay to pull weeds on our property. Only if they touch the money. Lee?
Trudy may need a little bit more information from you. Her question is, if you have completed a grant, so I'm not sure which type of grant you're referring to, either district or global, but want to secure funds to have recipients come for a visit, can a new grant cover that? So Trudy, you may need to provide Tim with some more information.
If it's a vocational training team for a specific purpose, yes, you can cover. If it's just a visit, no, you can't.
What we did, and this was part of one of our G7 grants that we did, we have our Ukrainian veterans that are coming to actually, actually collaborate with the educators that help put the training program together. But we were just, I think we were thinking, all of us in the group of 7, we're just going to fund it ourselves amongst the clubs. But I was just curious if we could have applied for a grant to cover that cost.
If it's part of a global grant, no. If it's not part of a global grant and you're just having a separate VTT from some other grant that's not Rotary, I believe you could. I would have to run that up the poll, flagpole to find out for sure.
It actually was a global grant, so you already answered the question.
Okay. Any others, Lee?
I'll read this out loud for the first time for all of us. We did a project for an NFP through a district grant last year, and we were told we needed a cooperating agreement just to demonstrate they were okay receiving our assistance. We did not cut any checks to that organization, but purchased materials directly out of our grants account. So a little bit confused and guidance needed. I'm going to answer that, you guys. My recommendation to the grant reviewers would be that in a situation like this, where you are going to be doing some work on a patio for a senior center, for example, is that you just get a letter stating that the senior center agrees with your project and allows Rotarians access to the property in order to do that improvement. If they're not involved at all and are not influencing the project, which is one of the key criteria for a cooperative organization, then I think just a cover letter would be acceptable from whoever is the recipient of your services. But I'll defer to Tim and Hal since they'll be the reviewers this year for the bigger, maybe more right answer.
I would agree with that. I would say though, if you're buying a washing machine or washer dryer or a freezer for an organization, I would get an MOU so that it's clear how that's going to be used and what they're going to do with it.
Who's responsible for maintenance?
Exactly, that sort of thing. Hal, do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I basically, excuse me, I basically asked for a, excuse me, a letter if to complete the project, it's necessary to access somebody else's property or for them to do something on the grant. If they're not handling money, it's just a letter. If they are handling any money, then I need a cooperating organization MOU.
So I think the final thing is to call or talk to your grant assigned person, and then we'll talk about which is the best way to go.
Okay, next question, Tim, from Linda Brown. It says she's planning on doing a grant for an international project in Mexico. And really the question comes down to if you're working with a Rotary Club in a different country, do you need to have an MOU with them? No. Cooperative organizations are only non-Rotarian entities.
The club I'm working with is in Mississippi. They're managing the project, and there's many clubs involved across several states.
Right, I saw that, but that's why I made my statement more general, because cooperating organizations are only non-Rotary entities.
So no, you don't need an MOU.
Oh, so, okay, thank you. I remember that now.
Okay. So a complete grant application is due no later than September 1st. So if you have any further questions about what a complete application is, if you have a cooperating organization MOU or a letter, as we've talked about, include that. All the tabs in the application are completed, including the attestations. There's little boxes at the bottom of the application page. You need to check those that make sure that your Rotarian involvement is adequate. There's no conflict of interest. And if you're buying something, let me give you an example. The Rotary Club on the coast was buying supplies for a food bank, and the Rotarians would go in when they were in Food for Less or Costco or wherever, and they would buy food, and then they would get reimbursed by the Rotary Club. That created all kinds of issues with tracking those funds. And so my suggestion to that club was get a debit card attached to your district bank account or sub-account. And they did that. And then the Rotarian that was going to do shopping would just check out the card from the treasurer at the next Rotary meeting. They would go buy the produce or whatever they needed, and then their bank account shows what the money was used for. And so they can have the receipt and the bank account, and it just made everything cleaner. And when they comes to writing their final report, that is so much easier than trying to track. It's actually against district policy to use gift cards or to reimburse Rotarians. Okay. So I'm going to ask
I have a comment to Linda Brown. Linda, you were on that RIST trip with me this past February, January. So I did a district grant application, was successful with that. So you and I can collaborate together on that, if that's the project you're talking about.
It is. Thank you. Yeah, I've been in touch with the Walkers about it.
Okay.
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, just to clarify, I've heard you use the term sub-account with reference to a club's accounts a couple of times. Does this grant application require an entirely separate bank account from what the club normally uses for its operating funds, et cetera, or can it simply be a line item within the bank account?
No, district grants require that the money be in a separate account, and how your bank sets it up. Sometimes they set it up as a sub-account. We just need a bank statement from that account. It can be a regular account or a sub-account. We need a bank statement from that account.
Okay.
If you would do me a favor now, and that is if you would put your name and your Rotary Club in the chat. That way we'll have a list of those people who are here, not just who registered.
Tim, and also whether they're the treasurer or the grant writer.
Oh, thank you, Hal. Yeah, so I would put in Tim Mobley, treasurer, Bear Creek Valley.
We already got 2 names only, so they have to go back and add their.
So yeah, if you can go back and add your position.
Missed the instruction to add your club name and position, so please re-enter for me.
Okay, while you're doing that,
Tim, I just want to say that is really critical that we know what club they're in and what position they hold, because a couple of years ago, people weren't putting their clubs in, and it took me hours going back into DAC and sorting out names and matching them up with clubs. So please make sure you got your club and your position in there.
thanks, Al. So we've talked quite a bit about cooperating organizations and having agreements with them. And basically, a cooperating organization is, and I'll just read this, is any reputable non-Rotary organization that provides expertise, infrastructure, advocacy, training, education, or other support for the project. And if you're not sure whether or not you need an MOU, contact Hal or myself, and we can talk about it, and we'll go on from there. That alleviates any issues. Lee?
Well, before we move on here, I'm talking about cooperating organizations. Question came up in the chat. The CEO of United Way, which is their club's cooperating organization, is also a Rotarian. Is that a conflict of interest?
It can be. I would make sure that that person does not write the grant.
No influence.
And then you can also, in the application, you can say, just state right up front that the CEO of the United Way is in our Rotary Club. He's not handling money. He didn't write the grant. There is no conflict of interest. It's not uncommon to have leaders in nonprofit organizations as members in Rotary Club. As long as it's transparent, it's not a problem. So the steps to getting your grant approved are your club board needs to approve the project. You can't just write a grant without approval from your club board. Then we submit it to the Rotary Foundation, and then the reviewer checks to see that the club is qualified, all the I's and T's are crossed and dotted, and then your grant's approved, and then you can spend money, but not before. And I'll talk more about that. So, breakdown of the roles. The club president signs and submits the grant. And their job is to monitor with the grant author the grant. Make sure everything aligns with your club policies and make sure that all the record keeping is being done. So the president doesn't do it. Their job is just to make sure it's happening. The treasurer's job is to manage the dedicated bank account, keep invoices, or make sure that the grant author is keeping invoices. If you are buying stuff piecemeal, use a debit card or just write checks. Don't reimburse Rotarians for using their own money. Transfer club funds into that account after you've received your DDF or even before. Just don't spend it until it's been approved. Make sure you sign the MOU and provide that bank statement. Now, there's a person missing here, and that's the president-elect when it comes to signing the MOU. So make sure that that's taken care of. The grant writer, they do the grant, they do the documentation, they coordinate active Rotarian involvement, and they communicate with either Hal or myself if they have questions. Speaking of Hal and myself, if there's anyone else who would like to be a part of this really inspiring work that we do with these district grants, please let me know, or the RFC Rick or Hal, and we'd be happy to talk to you.
I have a question, Tim,
Sure.
because I think I think I've done this wrong this time. I realized that you needed to have a separate bank account, and I knew that the grant was supplying 50 for this past year, 50% of the project. But you want the other 50% that is being paid out of club funds. You want those club funds transferred into the grant account and then completely paid out of the grant account, because I didn't do it that way.
Yes, it needs
Okay.
to be that way.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. Okay.
So yeah, that answers where a separate bank account is required. and you put the club cash in with it so that it's all in one place, and then all the expenditures come out of that account. Gift cards are against district policy, and as is reimbursing. We encourage debit cards, and I think we've beat that horse enough. So all project purchases must be dated after the grant was approved, and it's either Hal or myself, or if we get somebody else to work with us, your grant reviewer has to approve it. You'll get an email saying it's approved, that you're free to spend away and get your project underway, but you do not spend any funds. You can't have any receipts post-dated prior to that approval. If that happens, then we have to talk and funds have to be returned. Make sure you're calendaring important dates for the final report. It's always best to look at the final report and then work backward to know what you need to save and what needs to be in there. As Leanne mentioned earlier, this is a club service project, so there needs to be a number of people involved in some form or fashion, and we're going to talk about what that might look like. All documents must be uploaded in PDF format. If you want to upload an Excel format, if it's something you've done and you want to track it that way, that's fine. But JPEGs, taking pictures, we can't read it. It doesn't do you any good, and it'll just be returned and ask you to do a PDF. And if you want to take pictures of your project for your records, that's awesome. We'd love to see pictures of projects. So here's what active Rotarian involvement looks like. It's not necessarily hammering nails. It's project development. So you form a committee, and the committee works on what the project is going to look like. It could be publicity for the project. An example is a Rotary Club had an international project, and they were struggling to come up with Rotarian involvement because it didn't involve a Rotary Club on the other end. And I said, have them take pictures or a video and then present it to a community group or to your club project. So there has to be something that shows that the Rotary Club was involved. Financial management, maybe you have them buying supplies on the other end and they're sending you receipts and then you reimburse them. Getting receipts back can be really problematic in international grants if you don't have a solid connection on the other end. Public relations and being a liaison. Maybe you have 2 or 3 Rotarians who are on WhatsApp or Zoom with the other organization and you're recording those. So there is active involvement. It doesn't have to just be hands-on weed pulling or building something or planting something. So final reports. Final reports are a big deal. And they're a big deal because they don't have to be. If you keep your receipts and track your grant project as you go along, it's not a big deal at the end. You just fill out the final report at the end and then submit it. Now, who needs to sign it to be submitted? Anybody can sign it to be submitted for review. The grant author can sign it. It doesn't have to be the club president. So for the 26-27 grants, the final report is due December 1st, 2027. So if you have a 25-26 grant, then the final report is due December 1st this year, 2026. The one thing that trips people up the most on the final report tab is question number 1. The questions on the final report tab automatically populate from the application that you wrote. It does not answer the questions in question number 1, and the questions are in red. So please edit and answer the questions. So many times we get the final report, I look at it, the questions aren't answered, and I have to send it back and say, please answer the questions, because it automatically populates, and you look at it and you go, oh, look, it's already done. It's not. So make sure you upload the invoices and payment receipts on the expenses tab or in the documents. And if you use the documents tab, use an Excel file and match the receipts to the bank statements. That's why this expense tab is in there. It is much easier, and use PDF files only, please. If you have any other documentation that you want to keep, just upload it to the Documents tab because records are kept for 7 years. We can be audited by the Rotary Foundation. So let's say you start a project and something beyond your club control makes that so that it can't be completed by December 1st, if there's extenuating circumstances. Contact your grant reviewer and we'll talk about what to do. We can extend that for a period of time, but we need to talk about it. So this is just a suggestion that projects only are meant to last about a year or a little longer, and that if you monitor the progress and keep track, your final report and everything is much easier. Here are the dates to qualify your club: January to September. Select a project this year in up to May. You write the grant, submit it by June 1st. 12 months to complete it. Actually, it's a little longer than that, but we recommend that it be done in a year. And then the final report is due no later than the 27th. So who is responsible for negligence if there's a problem in a club with misuse of funds? It's the district. The district has to submit a district MOU to the Rotary Foundation saying the money they send us for district grants will be managed according to their policies and guidelines. So that's why we're so strict on having clubs do the correct thing with grant funds, because if we're ever audited and we cannot show that there was no misuse of funds, whether it's fraud, negligence, ineligible contributions, anything like that, then we could lose the ability as a district. So it involves all the clubs, not just the one who screwed up, lose the ability to do grants. So we want to make sure that our stewardship is sparkling clean, transparent, and that there are no problems. If anybody has any further questions on this, we can talk about it, but I think it's pretty clear. We just need to do what we need to do. Somebody once told me, $2,000 grant, that's not a big deal. Well, I donate $1,000 a year to the Rotary Foundation, and that's a big deal to me. And so if somebody misuses those funds, it would upset me. So we just want to make sure we do the right thing. So if there's unforeseen circumstances and you can't complete your grant, or you complete it for less than what you've written it for, any excess funds have to be returned to the district treasurer, the district grants treasurer. So let's say you write a $5,000 grant and you spend only $4,000 and there's $1,000 left. We would encourage you to look and see how you might use that $1,000 to continue that specific project if there's other things you can do. Or if you can't, then you have to return 1.5% of that money. So it used to be if you had $1,000 left, $500 had to be returned, but now it would be 1.5 of that $1,000. So anyway, if that's a problem, then we'll talk about it. If you write a grant for a project and you get into it, and before you spend any money, you see this isn't going to work, then before December 1st of this year, you can write a new grant. That still has to be submitted to the Rotary Foundation for approval. If that's approved and we approve the project at the district, then you can have a new project if it can be completed in the time that's required. And that happens maybe once or twice a year at the most. But We'd rather have you go, whoa, this isn't going to work, and back out and either give the money back or um, do a new project. So if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to ask.
Got a couple questions, Tim. Are you ready for those?
Absolutely.
Okay, so maybe a little review here. You talked about the club MOU as part of club qualification. Who are the signers on the club MOU?
So the signers are your PE.
For what? For which year?
Well, they're signing it this year in 2026 prior to the new Rotary year. So it's this year's PE, this year's PN, and and the treasurer for 26-27. So if your PN is not selected yet, your secretary can sign it. But it's next year's president-elect, and next year's treasurer. And I say next year, that's after July 1st.
Thank you. Next question. If you have less than $75 left, do you have to return it?
No.
Can 26-27 grant projects be funded before the final report for the 25-26 year is approved?
Yes. Once you're 26-20, yeah.
Yeah, on the $75, they don't have to return it, but it has to be spent on a district grant eligible. It has to be spent on something that's district grant eligible. It can't be just spent on ice cream.
Right. You can't just send it back to your general fund. Just leave it in a district grant account and then use it for a district grant related project. So what was this last question?
About the $75.
No, before
about if a new grant for 26-27, can that be funded before the final report for last year is
right.
approved?
There's overlap. So if your grant is approved in September, you can go ahead and start the new project. But we encourage you that as soon as your 25-26 project is done, submit the final report so that you get the two things crossed over and it can create some issues. It's not a requirement. It's just we strongly encourage you as soon as your grant for 25-26 is complete, submit the final report. But it's not necessary until December 1st.
Next question. What does the district policy say about, there are two questions here really, if there are more grant applications received than funding available, what happens?
Then there's a lottery process for selection. All the grants go into a hat and we pull out until we run out of funding.
And the second half of that is, well, then if there's a grant that they haven't spent any money and they're not going to be able to complete the project, why not go back to a club that maybe didn't get their grant approved because we were short on funds? Does the policy address that?
No, that won't happen because we do this lottery process prior to any funding. So if a grant was funded 25-26, there's nothing that affects them. It only affects the 26-27 applications, and they aren't funded until after they're approved. So there's no crossover with the funds.
Looking at the amount of district designated funds that are available for district grants for this year, if multiple clubs submit 2 grant projects, how do you and Al feel about the likelihood of the second grant being approved based on the amount of money available and the increase in match?
I think it's slim, honestly. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it's slim.
And going back to the previous question, kind of a follow-up. So if funds go back to the district, what happens to those funds?
They don't go back to the district. They go back to our DDF account that the Rotary Foundation has sent us. if there's funds left over at the end of the year, we have to send those funds back to the Rotary Foundation, and they roll over to our global grant account.
Okay, end of questions.
Okay. So the district grant overview page is your place to go for all things related to grants and to links, and that's where this recording will be, where the PowerPoint will be, and the MOU, etc., and the link to the quiz. So let's review the treasurer's responsibilities. Open and maintain a separate district bank account. Deposit the DDF check that you get into that account and transfer your club funds that match that into that account. Provide necessary documentation for the district grant application. That's that bank statement. Now, we used to ask for a canceled check. We do not ask for that anymore, and that doesn't do you any good. We don't need a copy of that. Communicate with the district grant project committee. That's the treasurer's responsibility. Okay, we're going to start going through the questions and the answers. So to participate, number one, in a district grant program, a club must qualify each year. Indicate all that apply. Okay, you have to sign, read, and comply with the MOU. Lee?
Well, before we actually get into this, maybe I'm seeing clarifying questions needed.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So what's the purpose of what you're doing now? What are you expecting of people as they go forward in order to complete the qualifications? Maybe you better review that. People are like, do I have to take this right now?
No, you do not need to take. The club has to be qualified by September 1st. I'm just going through the test, the quiz, because people struggled with it last year. And I don't want people struggling. I want people to passing. I want people informed about how grants work, what clubs need to do to be in compliance with all the policies and rules. So if you don't want to stay on and go through this quiz with all the answers, that's fine. You've been through the training at this point. So if you want to boogie, that's up to you. We'll go through this and it will be done by 11:30.
So we do have a recording of this entire morning available.
Correct.
You're going to have that posted for them. The link for the quiz will be on the
Landing page.
The landing page, the overview page. If you use the district grant icons, that'll all be there. If they have any other questions, they can contact you or Hal for that, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
All right. President-elect must attend PELS. That's not a requirement. Clubs have to be current on their district grant reporting. You have to pay your dues. So those are the answers to question 1. So why isn't this moving forward? There we go. Question 2, the Rotarian who authorized the grant must sign and submit the application to the district for approval. No, the president-elect or the president of the grant year 26-27, same person. Once the club board approves the project, the club can start spending funds to acquire supplies, etc. False, you cannot spend any funds, whether it's out of your club funds that are going to match the grant or from DDF. You cannot spend anything out of that district grant account prior to having your grant application approved. There are multiple stages of approval before a club can spend grant funds, both club cash and DDF. Indicate all the correct answers. District governor must approve. Nope, they don't. Rotary Foundation has to approve. Yes. Your district grant reviewer has to approve. Yes. And your club board needs to approve the project. Yes. Due to unforeseen circumstances, a club may change their project as long as the final report has not been submitted and no district grant funds have been spent. Indicate which is the correct statement. The correct statement is B, yes, with approval of the original grant author, grant reviewer, and the Rotary Foundation. So there's several approvals if you're going to change your grant. And so if this situation comes up, please contact your grant reviewer and we'll walk you through what needs to happen to have a new project. So the documentation in your grant has to be saved for how many years? 7. And if you put everything in your grant application documents, then it's saved. You don't have to do anything else. So many times some files end up in somebody's garage in a cardboard box that got wet and the last time it rained. So everything that goes into the documents in DACDB are safe. So what needs to be completed by June 1st? A bank statement, a club MOU, no pictures. The cooperating organization MOU is required by September 1st, if you're going to have one. Complete all the tabs on the online application. And do you have to have correspondence with your grant reviewer? No, you don't have to. There are several project types or areas that are eligible for district grant funds. Indicate all that apply. To do a global grant community assessment? Absolutely. Humanitarian projects? Yes. Support youth programs? Yes. Supplement global grants? No. To purchase items and supplies for a club fundraising event? No. What is the deadline for club qualification for this 26-27 Rotary year? September 1st. So here is a situation, and we'd had somebody talk about something similar earlier. Rotary Club of ABC identified a project partner with a local nonprofit in their community. Is a great fit because the director of the NGO is the incoming president for the club, and that strengthens communication between the two partner organizations, guaranteeing timely completion. The NGO has identified a food storage cooler as a high priority need. They have identified the vendor and have placed a pending order based on approval of the club's board. The grant project may be problematic because indicate all that apply. Well, it appears that the funds could be expended prior to project approval. That's a problem. There could be a conflict of interest, and as we talked about, the director should not be the grant author, and you just need to list in there that that is a situation and that there is no conflict of interest. There doesn't seem to be any Rotarian involvement. Appears to be a pass-through to the organization just to buy a freezer. So those are the issues with that scenario. A cooperating organization is any reputable blah, blah, blah that we've talked about before. Which statements are true? A cooperating organization may expend grant funds prior to grant approval. No, they cannot. Cooperating organization is exempt from providing receipts. No, they're not. When working with cooperating organization, it is important to be aware of any potential conflicts of interest. Absolutely. Project funds may be used by a cooperating organization only as outlined in their MOU. That's true. And cooperating organizations are a good way to enhance district projects. They can be, yes. A club can submit 2 grant applications. Which statements are correct? Both requests may be for $3,000. That's true. Both may be high priority. Nope. One's high, one's medium. Both might be multi-club projects. Nope. Only one, and it's the high priority. If grant applications exceed DDF, grant applications will be chosen by lottery. That's 2. It's not our job to choose which we think is a better project over others. It's strictly random by lottery. Where is the best, most reliable place to find grant-related forms like club MOU, operating organization, cooperating organization MOU, checklist for grant qualification, Rotary Learning Center? Nope. District grant overview page? Yes. By contacting the district grants chair? Well, no, and we don't have one. And at the spring grants training? Nope. So the landing page is where everything is found, the overview page. Based on policy changes this year, what deadlines are correct? A club MOU must be attached by June 1st. District grant bank account must be attached by June 1st. That's correct. An image of a canceled check. Nope, that's history. We don't do that anymore. A cooperating organization attached to the grant by September 1st. If you're going to have one, that's when it needs to be there. On a multi-club project, the participating club's presidents must sign by September 1st. That's true. They don't all have to sign by June 1st. Sometimes getting all the clubs on a multi-club project to sign, getting the presidents is kind of like herding cats. Projects that are unable to complete by December 1st deadline due to supply chain or other issues may extend based on individual basis. That's true. Each year, Rotary clubs must complete the steps of qualification to participate in district grants and submit a complete grant application prior to September 1st. What documents are required to qualify a club and to submit a complete grant application to have it approved by September 1st? Well, we know that there has to be the cooperating organization if it's applicable. We don't care if the president attended pets. I know that the governor-elect cares, but for our purposes, it doesn't matter. We need the certification, and by putting your name in that chat box, we have that certification. If you know somebody who watches the video, they need to send me an email saying that they watched the video so we can add their name and their club. Certification that the club treasurer, yes, by putting your name in there, we got you covered. Then you have to complete all boxes on the application, all tabs.
For best. Oh,
Somebody have a question? Nope. Okay, to whom do you send the signed MOU? You don't send it to anybody. You attach it by June 1st to the grant application. International grant projects can be problematic. What steps might a club take to make the final reporting go smoothly? Well, involving a Rotary club at the other end might help. Create a strong partnership with an NGO in the area who might monitor that grant for you. Make sure that the grant has strong oversight. And in many cases, Rotary clubs send Rotarians to visit projects. What generally are the biggest challenges in completing final report for international? You notice how we keep hitting this international thing? It's because it has been a real problem. Getting receipts from the host organization can be a problem. Demonstrating Rotarian involvement can be a problem. Getting the significant dates and timelines can be a problem. Converting to local currency can be a problem. So it's all of them. So receipts and payments, documenting grant expenditures are part of the final report. Indicate where you can upload receipts and payments documentation for review. The expenses tab, or upload an Excel spreadsheet to the documents tab. And you can actually add folders in that Documents tab, and it's much easier in Final Report if you add a folder that says expenses and then put that Excel spreadsheet into that folder. So here's an example of a JPEG of a receipt. You can see why we won't accept those, because you can't read it. So is this an eligible receipt? No. Okay, 3 more questions. Who must sign and submit the initial grant application? President-elect. One of the requirements for a district grant project is active Rotarian involvement. This can,
Tim,
yes,
sorry, can we go back?
yeah,
Okay, so I had asked that in the chat, and I got the impression that the sitting president signed the application, but the PE signed the MOU and the treasurer signed the MOU. So the president-elect signs the application.
that's correct. It's
Okay.
going to happen in their year.
Right. Okay, so basically the PE is signing all of that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what are good examples of active participation by Rotarians? Holding a committee meeting where they're planning, developing a slideshow for presentation at a community meeting. Absolutely. The club leadership poses with a giant check they just presented as a pass-through. No. Have members attend meetings with cooperating organization to determine purchases for the project. Absolutely. Planning. Frequent Zoom calls, or a lot of international clubs, countries are using WhatsApp now. So it doesn't have to be Zoom. It can be any form of communication. And it's good to have a record of it. If you can keep a diary or a log of those, it's great. Club's treasurer's responsibility, opening bank account or maintaining it, reimbursing fellow Rotarians? Nope. Transferring club funds to match
Yes.
media? Yes. Providing oversight? Nope. Providing needed documentation? Yes. That's basically providing the bank statements. Clubs must qualify annually to participate in district grants. To qualify your Rotary Club, the treasurer must sign the MOU. Correct. Treasurer must pay district and RI dues if they want to maintain the club. Yes. The treasurer must attend in person. No. The treasurer must complete online learning program and the quiz. Yes. So that is the program, the test, and I'm open to questions.